Hello, welcome back to our channel. And I am so absolutely delighted to welcome here a dear friend of mine, Nikky Smedley from UK. Now, this is a series of discussions, talks and chats with creatives and culture policy experts and creative industry strategists and consultants across Europe on the short and long-term impact of this crisis on the sectors that we work with, culture, creativity. The series is being done by the European Network of Cultural Experts called Culture Policy Designers Network. And we are so happy to have Nikky among us. Nikky, where exactly are you at this moment?
Good morning. I am by the sea on the South Kent coast of England. And it's a beautiful day.
It is, I see. And how is the situation currently in UK? We all read the news regarding the political level and the kind of medical urgency. But how is this all taking toll on creative sector?
It is quite a bleak outlook at the moment, you know. There's been a lot of motion from larger theatres and cultural creative organisations. For example, Rufus Norris at the National Theatre has said that he can't imagine the National Theatre continuing unless they have governmental support. And that's really the message that's come from a lot of people is we need governmental support, otherwise we don't know how we're going to continue. That's on the larger scale. On the smaller scale, we've already lost a couple of theatres. The Nuffield in Southampton, for one, it's a really lovely theatre that just said, that's it, we can't come back from this. And I think that's going to be a pattern that continues across the board. The Arts Council are giving out some emergency funding for smaller and independent artists. And those like myself, who were in the middle of making work that was Arts Council funded, they really sort of said, well, let's just see, you know, just keep the money, don't worry about it. If we come out the other side and you can continue making the show and there are theatres enough to tour it in, which, you know, I don't know. And if you need it to live on it. So it's very up in the air at the moment and not optimistic, I'm afraid.
Nikky, many people know. I don't know if you like that reference all the time, but many people know you and actually have been grown up thanks to you as Laa Laa in Teletubbies. You work with schools, cultural institutions. You talk about communication. You talk about you have a fantastic book out. How do you speak child? As also your blog is titled. Now, my question is, in these times, and how do you see that kind of an impact on the kind of work you do? Do you think that there are going to be less attention and less opportunities for institutions to actually invest into these kind of programs for educational purposes, early childhood programs, people with special needs, etc.?
To be honest with you, we'd reached such a stage in our education system where our schools had so little money to spend on outside intervention. You know, for example, my own work going in and working on storytelling, developing literacy with young children, really, you know, 5 and so forth, that kind of age. I haven't had any of that work for a couple of years anyway, because the schools haven't had the money to pay for it. So you don't know. From the theatrical point of view, I mean, just to say a little bit about my situation, I did just mention it before, but I was in the middle of making a one-woman show. Our premiere was supposed to be 28th and 29th of April, with another preview on the 8th of May, with a view to touring through the summer and the autumn. Of course, all of that has just gone. But the organisation that I was working with for the 8th of May performance, they're called Live and Local, and they put theatrical performances into rural situations. So some village halls or more remote, smaller theatres, sometimes an outdoor location, those kinds of things. They are still very keen to have my show. We might have to, if any kind of theatrical performance is allowed in autumn, we're talking about maybe doing a scaled down tour with not the technical and digital side of the show, but to have something going out there so that people, because I don't need to tell you, Ragnar, there is a basic sort of need. People need to feel that they're part of a cultural community and that they can go and, I mean, when you say it out loud, it sounds strange. Let's go and sit in the dark and listen to stories. But it's a human thing, and then that, it's what we love and need. I believe that, and I know you believe that. However, I have seen some comments online, when on social media, some of our, as I was saying, our larger theatrical establishments have put things out about our need for audience, in performers in my particular sector. Responses have come in saying, no, just forget it. We don't need you theatres. Go and grow some crops or spend the money on the national health system. And so there is a certain, there's always going to be a sector of the community who thinks that the arts and culture is just a load of phooey anyway. And perhaps if it's going to die a death, it's going to die a death and we don't care. But I can't help but think they would care if every aspect of our culture suddenly vanished.
This is actually happening around Europe. Even here, the actors in the public theatre were sent to a useful work, as it was said, because they are getting salary anyway. So, why don't they do something useful? And this actually very much correlates to something that in one of our previous videos, Philip Kern was saying, that in times when politicians are dividing the world between essentials and non-essentials, that we as a culture creative sector need to remind them that culture is part of the essentials. Do you think that the government's reaction to coming up with support mechanisms and solutions to help the sector survive have been adequate?
No, but I think the inadequacies come back to a lack of strong leadership and a lack of communicating any kind of vision for the future. Even with of course we understand that you can't say it will be like this because none of us know. But even with the proviso of not being able to be certain about it, to think, well, this is a possibility, we could do this. This is a possibility, we could do that. There's really sort of nothing to hold on to, nothing being communicated. Talking about reminding the powers that be about how important culture and the arts are, I think that ties in very much with the education. You don't need to explain to a young child how important it is to draw or to express yourself physically or to sing and move, or those things that children feel instinctively, we as humans feel instinctively. And I think that's kind of always going to be our hope, that you only need to open your eyes and observe how our youngsters are to see that obviously the cultural aspect of our lives is something very deeply important to us as humans.
Nikky, you are a creative person from head to toe. As you mentioned, you're not just an author, a writer, you are an actor, you direct, you choreograph, you're in choreography, in television, media. You have done a lot of different things. How difficult or how easy, I don't know, it is to remain or to nurture that creative spark in times of lockdowns and in times of confinement and in times of Zooms?
Apart from weeping at the the lack of my show, I felt incredibly lucky when lockdown happened to be a creative person. Friends of mine online and so forth been moaning, we don't know what to do and we're bored, and I've painted the walls and I've done the garden, and now what do I do? And you think, well, as a creative person, I've never stopped. I've worked as much writing during lockdown as I would have done, more probably than I would have done without. I think it's a real treasure. And I was talking actually with Doris Careva, your lovely poet, about this, and how whether or not the lockdown has an effect on your creativity. I think it sort of depends. Do you know, it's like you said yourself before we started this filmed conversation, what a lovely time you were having, spending time with your family and everybody was happy. And you sort of think, it's like that. Like I go for a walk along the beach this morning and it's beautiful. And you think everything should be right. You should feel very happy. And yet you don't feel happy because you can't smile the smile of everything's all right with the world, because everything is not all right with the world. But I think personally, I find my creativity is a comfort against that. I have actually done a couple of pieces of writing that have been commissioned about how to help younger children explain what's going on. I wrote a poem called Something You Can't See for an organisation called Baby College UK that work with very, very small children. And I sent it actually to Doris, and she translated it, and your children's magazine has published it very nicely. So strangely, there is a little bit of a link there. I never can quite. This is the longest I've ever not had a trip to Estonia, so but I'm still there. I'm still there somehow. So yes, there are things, it creeps up on you. For me, it kind of creeps up. I'll be doing fine and then suddenly it'll just hit you. What if this never ends? What if I never get to stand in front of an audience again? What if, those thoughts come into your head, and then it's difficult to be positive. But you just hang on to the creative thread, I think. I feel sorry for people who don't have that in their lives.
I don't assume that you are a fortune teller, but when we talk about resilience, then there is this big discussion on whether you bounce back or you bounce forward. Meaning that, and even you mentioned that you had your plans for this one-woman show. Now things were cancelled. Do you think that you will be, once this all is over, that you're going to, come back to your earlier plans and go ahead as nothing has, happened in the meantime? Or you think that the world will change and what you do and what creatives do have to change with it? So do you think that the world is a very different place to operate in after this crisis?
Interesting question. I see two things, information of what's happening, not just in this country, but around the world. And I can't help but think there is no going back. We can only go on into it has to be different. We don't even know if there will ever be a vaccine. Things have to change. And then, on the other hand, I see, for example, last weekend when they relaxed some of the lockdown rules here. And it's complete chaos outside my front door, with more people down here at the beach than I have ever seen, even in the height of August. And people, you can tell, horrible, really, and dangerous, and kind of make me cringe. But on the other hand, I completely understand how they feel. They are so desperate to have some sense of normality and some sense of joy with that big cloud of death hanging over everybody. But yes, let's just go to the beach and sit too close and fling all our children in the sea together. So I think there's those two things. There's the fact and the actuality of, yes, things are different, and then and so we must move forward. But also people so desperately wanting the security of what they knew before all this happened, and those two things kind of playing against each other. I think that will, however they balance against each other, will dictate what it looks like on the other side.
as you are an expert in kind of early childhood communication and power of storytelling and engaging children, also in cultural activities, institutions, museums, libraries, and we've done a lot of work on this. I just want to get your perspective, because in our, we have, and our viewers, they are also not only professionals, but they have children of their own. How do you think this crisis and lockdowns and homeschooling and in some countries not really physically being able to go outside for months on end, how will this impact children?
I think another of the positives, hopefully, that will have come out of this is the amount of time that parents have to spend with their children. And that can only be a positive for the children themselves to have that kind of attention, and also for the parents, and kind of by way of a tip as well, to have the chance to have time to really observe your child or children at play is invaluable. I mean, you learn everything I've learned by watching them. And I don't just mean even with my eyes, but, just taking in everything that they do. And that is totally invaluable in terms of what we learn about how children communicate. Will not just communicate, how they interact more genuinely with the world around them and with those that they're with. I think the real sadness is that they're not with each other, because children love each other so much. It's like, I remember before all of this, I was in the supermarket and there was a mother with a baby and, sat in the trolley walking around, and another mother came around the corner with, must have been about a 2-year-old, and the baby had been making a lot of noise, and the 2-year-old came around and looked at it, and they just looked at each other. And they're sort of looking around like this, and just think, that's exactly why, when I worked for Ragnar Television, why we put so many children on the screen, because they are fascinated with each other and they love to see each other. And of course, they're limited in doing that at the moment. So I think even if it is only on a screen, to make sure that children are exposed to each other as much as they possibly can be in all kinds of different ways is very important for their development. Yes, which actually is something that I talked about in the video I made for Baby College UK. You might be able to find that somewhere. It's probably on YouTube. And but yeah, I talked about anxiety there and how sensitive children are to the feelings of their parents. Like hair trigger sensitive, more than you could ever imagine. They pick up on how their parents feel. And so it's really important that we keep our own anxiety under wraps and that we try to protect them from however nervous, anxious we might be feeling ourselves. And to offer them that kind of security, because of course every child is looking to their parents. They are the godlike ones who can make everything okay. And it's super upsetting when a child realizes that that isn't the case. I mean, it's part of growing up, but you don't want them to see it too early. So yes, really to remember that you are their security, and if everything is all right with you and your relationship with them is good, then that's enough for the child. I think it's okay. On the other hand, I mean, obviously it depends on age and cognitive ability and so forth. But on the other hand, children are they like a bit of responsibility, and they are very capable, So I think if you're explaining the situation in very clear terms that they understand, and it's not filled with anxiety, it's just straight and factual, then they're able to take that on board and to feel like they're contributing to making things better, and to the family unit would be a very strong and positive thing for them.
There's one question that we've been asking in the end of each of the episodes. So this is no difference here. If I would call you back in 1 year exactly, where would you take the call, and what do you think the world would look like?
I'm trying to be honest, that's why it's taking me a long time. I'm trying to decide exactly what I really do think about that. Okay, I might still be here in this place. I might actually be with my husband, which would be kind of nice. It's our wedding anniversary today. It's a long way away. I don't think things will be back to normal. But I think we will have started to make life feel a little bit less uncertain, I hope. I think I might have done a couple of shows, small, and I will have finished a book. And for the people in this country, I would like to feel in a year's time there was some hope and some optimism, because that's pretty thin on the ground at the moment.
A book, a couple of shows, beautiful nature, beach, husband. Sounds like a paradise. Sounds like a very successful year to come.
Wow. Yeah, I know I'm very lucky. I know a lot of people are having a much harder time at this than I am.
But thank you, Nikky, for those thoughts. I've always valued our discussions, and I really hope that you stay healthy and well. I wish all the good for your family, and stay negative.
Thank you, Ragnar. It's been lovely talking with you.